Welcome back to the Tech Loft Podcast, Episode 4.
Episode 4 already.
I know, right?
Today's flying.
It's really flying by. For Episode 4, we're diving into something pretty fascinating today, something that I think really, I don't know, it just highlights how a decision made in the business world can completely change the trajectory of an entire industry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And this is something that still happens today. It's not just something that happened back then, and it's kind of a wild story.
And this deep dive is going to be taking us back to like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So, 2001.
Okay, yeah, Y2K's over.
Yeah, Y2K. We survived Y2K barely.
We're good to go.
But 2001 is when the Xbox launched.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah.
So we're talking original Xbox here.
Yeah.
And at the time, obviously PlayStation was kind of the king of the hill, right?
Like the undisputed champion. Like they had come out of nowhere, really, and kind of dominated that whole...
Well, they had the PlayStation 1, obviously.
PlayStation 1, of course.
Yeah, which did fantastic. Yeah. And then they had the PS2, which was like...
Which was a monster.
Which was a monster hit.
Yeah.
So at that time, it seemed like nothing could really shake PlayStation's grasp on the console market.
Right. I mean, they were at the top of their game.
But as any good business story goes, a challenger appears.
A challenger appears.
And that challenger was the Xbox. And I don't think a lot of people realized at the time how seriously PlayStation took that threat.
Right. I mean, everyone at that time was thinking, oh, this is just some Microsoft thing. Like, they make software. Like, what are they doing making hardware?
Right. Like, how could they possibly compete with a company that was solely focused on...
A gaming company, yeah.
Yeah, a gaming company and had that pedigree.
But someone at PlayStation was definitely worried.
They were very worried. And we actually have some insight into that worry thanks to a guy named Chris Deering.
Chris Deering
was he was a key figure at PlayStation during... the early 2000s.
Okay. A big name at PlayStation.
Big name at PlayStation. And he's recently given some interviews and stuff. And it's fascinating because he kind of pulls back the curtain and gives us a glimpse into how PlayStation reacted to the arrival of the Xbox.
Interesting.
And it's not what you'd expect. I mean, you would think a company at the top would just be like, whatever. We're PlayStation. We're not worried about this.
Like bring it on.
Yeah, bring it on. A little upstart, whatever. But they weren't like, they were actually quite concerned.
So what did they do?
So they did, and this is where it gets, I think, really smart on their part.
Okay.
Deering's approach was basically to secure these things called timed exclusivity deals with third-party developers.
Timed exclusivity. Okay. I've heard this term thrown around.
I think a lot of people have heard it, but maybe they don't really understand.
Yeah, what does that really mean?
Yeah, what it really means.
Break that down for us.
So basically, you've got companies like Rockstar, right?
Rockstar Games, yeah.
Rockstar Games, the makers of Grand Theft Auto.
Uh-huh.
They make games for various consoles.
Right, they're not tied to just PlayStation or just Xbox.
Exactly.
They want to release their game on everything so everyone can play it.
Right, so everyone can play it and they can make the most money.
Makes sense.
But back then, and this is still something that happens today, certain companies like Sony or Microsoft, they'll go to these developers and they'll say, hey, we want your game to be on our console only for like a certain amount of time.
Oh, like a special deal.
Like a special deal.
Right.
Like you can release it on other consoles, but like we want it first and we want it for like 6 months or a year or whatever it is.
Okay.
And they're willing to pay a lot of money for that privilege.
And so this is about trying to get like the hot new game.
The hot new game.
That everybody wants to play.
That everybody wants to play and making sure that it's on your console.
So you can sell more consoles.
They can sell more consoles. Exactly.
That's smart.
It's like, imagine, it's like cable TV, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like you want to watch a certain sport.
Yeah.
And that sport's only on one channel.
Yeah, got to get that channel.
You got to get that channel. You got to subscribe to that package.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thinking here.
That's a really good analogy, actually.
Yeah, PlayStation wants to be that destination for gamers where if you want to play the latest and greatest games, you got to have a PlayStation.
So they're willing to shell out a lot of money to make sure they can say that.
Exactly. And that brings us to Grand Theft Auto.
Okay, the big one.
The big one.
Here we go.
Now, this is where it gets really juicy because Deering somehow managed to lock down not one, not two, but 3 GTA games.
Oh, wow. He went all in.
He went all in.
What were the 3?
GTA 3.
The big one. Yeah, the one that really changed everything.
Vice City.
Oh, yeah.
And San Andreas.
Whoa. So like the whole like beginning of the 3D era?
Exactly. Like the whole like golden era of those PS2 GTA games.
Crazy.
And think about this, though. At the time, GTA was still kind of finding its feet, right?
Right. GTA 1 and 2, They were good games, but they weren't like
They weren't this cultural phenomenon.
massive phenomena. Yeah.
Yeah, they were top-down, kind of like more arcadey kind of games.
Right.
GTA 3 was this huge leap forward.
Yeah, it went full 3D open world.
3D open world, and nobody knew.
Nobody knew if it was going to work.
If it was going to work.
It was going to be janky.
People were going to like it.
How, like, going from 2D to 3D is a huge jump.
Massive leap.
Especially back then.
Especially back then.
It was really kind of uncharted territory.
Yeah, it really was. And so for Sony to say, okay, we're gonna bank on these 3 games.
I'm going to put all their eggs in this basket.
It was a gamble for them.
Huge gamble.
It was a gamble for Rockstar, too.
Yeah, because if it flops...
If it flops...
If GTA 3 doesn't work, then...
They're in trouble.
They're in trouble.
But it paid off.
Big time.
Big time.
Biggest video game of all time.
I mean, GTA 3 exploded.
Yeah.
It was like this cultural phenomenon. People were talking about it everywhere.
I remember back then it was like all over MTV. It was on the news.
It was insane. And that success cemented PlayStation's dominance for that generation.
Wow. So you're saying that without those timed exclusivity deals, PlayStation might not have been as successful as it was?
I think it's very likely.
That's crazy to think about.
I mean, think about it. Xbox didn't get GTA 3 for 2 years.
2 years?
After it launched on PlayStation.
That's a huge disadvantage.
Massive disadvantage.
Yeah.
And gamers are impatient, right?
They want the latest and greatest. They don't want to wait 2 years.
Exactly. And if you're somebody who is maybe on the fence between buying an Xbox or a PS2,
right,
you're going to go with the PlayStation.
You're going to go where the games are.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And you know what's even more interesting is...
What's that?
PlayStation actually gave Rockstar a discount on royalties to make this deal happen.
Wait, so they paid them less money?
They paid them less money.
So what's the catch?
Well, the catch is they got to keep GTA on their platform for longer and keep those gamers hooked.
So it's a long-term strategy.
It's a very long-term strategy.
Wow, they're thinking ahead. They're playing chess, not checkers.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a brilliant move on their part because it worked.
It definitely worked.
It worked incredibly well.
So Rockstar is happy because they're getting a better deal. PlayStation's happy because they're dominating the market.
Everybody wins except maybe Xbox.
Yeah, maybe not so much Xbox.
But that's competition, right?
That's competition.
That's how it works.
And competition breeds innovation.
Exactly.
Mm.
So, I think the big takeaway here is that even when you're at the top, you can't afford to be complacent.
Right. The moment you think you've got it made, that's when somebody comes along and takes it all away.
Absolutely. And PlayStation recognized that.
Clearly.
And they made a very smart, calculated risk.
And it paid off.
It paid off massively.
This is a great example of like a win-win partnership, too.
Exactly.
Both sides are benefiting.
It's a textbook example of how to form a strategic partnership that really works.
I wonder if they still do this kind of stuff today.
Oh, they definitely do.
Yeah.
Timed exclusivity is still a huge part of the gaming industry.
Okay.
I mean, you see it all the time with like certain DLC coming to certain consoles first, or,
Right.
certain games being exclusive to certain platforms for a period of time.
Even things that aren't even video games anymore.
Right.
Like you look at social media platforms and
like TikTok.
like TikTok trying to get certain celebrities to use their platform exclusively.
Exactly. It's the same playbook, just a different feel.
Different field, same playbook.
Same playbook, yeah.
That's wild.
It's really fascinating to see how this one decision back in 2001 still has ripple effects today.
It's crazy how these things kind of set a precedent for how the whole industry operates.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder what's next, right?
Yeah, what's the next big game changer?
What's the next big deal that's going to shake things up?
What's the next GTA 3?
Right, exactly.
What's Sony going to do for GTA 6?
Oh, that's a good question.
Is there going to be some big deal?
Is there going to be some crazy timed exclusivity thing? I don't know.
We'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see. But I guarantee you somebody somewhere is trying to figure out how to make that happen.
Oh, I'm sure they're already working on it.
Oh, yeah, the wheels are turning.
The wheels are always turning.
I think that's a good place to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I hope you found that interesting.
I did.
I think it's just a really fascinating example of how business decisions and competition can really drive innovation and change the course of an industry.
Yeah, and how taking a risk can pay off big time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So before we go, I want to remind everyone to head over to the techloft.com.
Good website.
Good website.
I like it.
A lot of great stuff there. More deep dives into all sorts of tech topics.
Lots of cool stuff.
Yeah, so check it out.
Yeah.
And while you're there,
you can
subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and YouTube as well. We've got video content over there, too.
The video content is top-notch. Gotta check that out.
Yeah, and if you're listening on Spotify, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.
Don't miss out.
Don't miss out.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening to the Tech Loft Podcast. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening.